Hello and welcome to IMTV. My name is Adam Booth. I'm your host for tonight. I'm the editor of Socialist.net. And tonight on IMTV, we're going to be talking again to Claudio Bellotti in a minute, one of the editors of Rivoluzione in Italy, the Italian Marxist newspaper. And he's going to be talking to us about the rising militancy that we're seeing amongst workers in Italy, which is something we're seeing across the whole of Europe as the shutdown, the lockdown begins in many countries. We're seeing this hypocrisy developing where, on the one hand, ordinary people are being expected to lock themselves away in order to stop the spread of the virus. But the bosses, it seems, are ignoring this and are putting profits before lives, trying to keep sites open, trying to keep construction going, trying to keep production going so that they can carry on making their profits. And this is leading to strike actions, walkouts, and things like this taking place across the whole of Europe. In Britain recently, for example, the hashtag shut the sites has started trending on Twitter because of construction sites being kept open by these callous bosses. And Claudio in a minute is going to talk to us and join us to talk about this question of the militancy, the strikes taking place amongst workers. Now, just before we bring in Claudio, just a reminder, this is a live stream being broadcast. And if you want to ask Claudio a question or raise any thoughts, please get in touch with us through the YouTube channel. You can leave a message there and hopefully we'll have time to ask Claudio a question in a minute. So now I'll just bring in Claudio. Hello, Claudio. Can you hear us okay?
Yes. Hello, Adam.
Excellent. Good to see you again. Still safe and healthy, I can see.
Yes.
So, yes, as I was just saying to our viewers, Italy obviously is further ahead than the rest of Europe. You've been in a lockdown for a while, and there is, in all of Europe, but particularly in Italy, we can see this militant mood developing amongst workers against the attempts by the bosses to keep production going, to put profits before lives. Italy, as I said, is ahead of most other places in this process. So can you describe what kind of things we can expect in Europe? What kind of actions have we seen in Italy being taken by workers?
Yes. Well, the question of strikes and shutdowns of workplaces came out immediately after the decree, which basically closed Italy 2 weeks ago. And almost immediately, there were some spontaneous strikes, which in the following days developed in a real wave of strikes spread and scattered in most of the country, which were led and organized from below by the shop stewards mainly, and ordinary workers and rank and file trade unionists, with the main basic demand that the non-essential industries and services had to be cut down, and those who have to work to guarantee the basic needs must be put in a safe condition. Workers who still have to work must be do that in a safe way and not be sent to risk their health or even their lives. And this developed for several days, particularly in many big industrial plants. I think we related some of that in the last week's discussion. And there was an important acceleration in the last 4 or 5 days, which I think is worth discussing also regarding other countries. Because, of course, the bosses, the Federation of the Italian Industries, put up a very stubborn resistance against any idea of a generalized shutdown. But last Friday, after a dramatic increase in the number both of positive people and also victims of the epidemic, the government had to announce the lockdown, the shutdown of all the non-essential industries and services. And that was a huge victory of this movement, which I repeat was completely organized from below. Only after the workers started to move, the trade union leadership began to somewhat support or give some strike, issue some calls for several strikes. But basically, they just followed what the shop stewards and the rank and file workers were doing. And so last Saturday, many people thought that we were going to almost complete lockdown, I repeat, of all non-essential industries and services. And at that point, a very important and dramatic clash began, which with the Bosses Federation on one side, the government, the trade union leadership, which were the main actor, pulling and pushing in different directions in order to reach their aim. The government published a non-official list of sectors and industries which were going to be closed, which was already full of loopholes. I mean, breaches where the bosses can move into in order to guarantee that their own industry was going not to close, it was going to continue to production. And for the whole of the Sunday, there was a very harsh polemics. On the other side, the leader of the Confindustria, which is the Italian CBI, stated in a very provocative way that they were not prepared to accept this generalized paralysis, as he put it down, and they tried to basically to have the government to withdraw this list and draw a much more limited list of closures and shutdowns. And at that point, the government backtracked. They said, we are going to postpone the decree for 3 days. And that, of course, was too much to swallow even for the trade union leaders, who said, no, if you withdraw the decree on tomorrow, which was last Monday, there will be a general strike in all these, we will call a general strike in all these industries. So the government had to change its position once more. And they said, okay, we issue the decree, but it will be applied since Wednesday, that is today. And they changed several times this list of industries and workplaces which were going to be shut.
So, Claudio, can you just explain then what, in terms of this flip-flopping that the government's done, it presumably represents the pressures they're under from the workers on one side and the bosses on the
other. Absolutely.
And what kind of production are the bosses trying to get away with? Like what are they classing as being essential production, and how is the government responding to this?
If we want to say it openly, they consider essential any production which is still profitable. I mean, there are industries which are in the difficulties because they have problems with supplies, problems with market outlets because of the general crisis on an international level. And so maybe some of these are also, I would say, happy to shut down for a few days and then ask for the state to give them money in order to cover the expenses they had. All the others want to go on produce. For instance, they try to put open the aerospace industry, arms factories, everything, even state-owned industries like, for instance, Leonardo, which is an aerospace industry very heavily involved in military and defense equipment. There is no reason for keeping it open, basically. And workers staged a sort of war to rule and partial strike. But the management refused to accept to shut it down. Even the same is true for the shipyards, which are state-owned in the majority. And also on small scale, we had, for instance, in the report from a small factory in Lombardia, which is producing, cosmetics. and they said that they're going to they were not closing because they were planning to turn the production into medical equipment and so on. So every excuse was used. But as you said, the government turn and flip-flop uh, were the result of one fact, that they knew that the general strike was going to be real if they hadn't give some concession.
So
The,
how much of this is being led from the top in terms of the workers, and how much of it is being kind of pushed from below? How much of it is spontaneous? What's the relationship between these strikes and the union leaders?
well, as I said, most of the strikes which took place were led from below, and the trade union leadership just gave official support after the apart from some strikes of today, which were called by the Metal Workers Federation and some others. But the point is that when the trade union leaders understood that they couldn't just keep silent and had to some way support, and that was seen in a favorable way, of course, by the workers, who thought that they had a way of pressurize the government and the bosses. The position of the trade union leadership was not to lead, but to use the strikes to scare the government. What they said was fear can turn into anger, so the government must stop before this happens. And on Monday, when they said they were going to organize a general strike by today if the decree was not changed, the literal words of the General Secretary of the CGIL were, the government must help us to avoid this struggle. The government must help us to recall this struggle, which eventually happened today on the pretext of some minor concession which were given and which are not even officially known, or at least up to 1 year ago, there was no official list of the new industries which were going to be shut down. Having said all this, I must say that this is a partial victory, because I would say that 2 or 3 million workers probably will stay at home through this decree, which is a victory, but it's only a partial victory, because a real lockdown would have been achieved by a coordinated and generalized action by the working class. The conditions were there, the feeling, the mood was definitely there, but there was, as I said, no real leadership, just a following up and an attempt to base the action of the trade union bureaucracy and leadership just to gain the ear of the government, and nothing more than that.
Yeah. So you're saying that the workers are, taking a step back in terms of this action now because of these concessions, but is the mood presumably is still very volatile. I was just, in fact, I'll show the viewers at home, but there's I see on Marxist.com reading up about this this strike wave. It mentions that the comrades have launched an appeal, a kind of petition, and the slogan apparently is "The workers are not expendable," and this has gained large numbers of signatures in the space of a few hours. So is the mood still there in terms of if these concessions are taken away, if the bosses try to ramp up production again? Do you think you could be seeing, further strike waves breaking out?
Well, the mood is definitely still there, and so it's too early to talk about a setback of this movement. There is an objective feature, that is, if 5,000 workers in a big plant are now at home, they are not going to strike. They will be in solidarity with the others, but their weight will not be fed in the same way as it used to be. But the contradictions are there. First of all, because many non-essential industries will continue to work. and the building sites and so on. Even the workers in the building site of the bridge in Genoa, which are rebuilding the bridge which collapsed 2 years ago, maybe you will remember, with more than 40 victims, asked to stop the building site for a few days at least. And on the other hand, we have a huge number of workers who have to go to work. Not only in the health system, but transport system, shipment and deliveries, the supermarkets and groceries and so on. And there is a movement in this section of the working class too, because they know they cannot stay at home, but they are fighting for safety. That is, there are several appeals. Some were promoted by our own comrades, but also by other shop stewards and so on. For instance, to reduce the working day or the working week in supermarkets, because with many workers at home calling ill, many workers at home because they have taken holidays because they have their children at home, the schools are closed and so on. Workers in supermarkets are working 40 or 50 hours per week, which means an increased risk, of course, an increased danger. And so there are several initiatives from below. Some strikes. There is a strike tomorrow, I think, in 2 regions of big retail, big groceries and big supermarkets to have the places shut down at least on Sundays, to reduce evening openings, to have more safety equipment, to close down some positions where workers are too close to each other or too close to the customers, which are non-essential. And this is the same in, for instance, in the shipment and deliveries companies. Workers are going around the city to ship goods, and they want to do that only for necessary and goods. I mean, they are prepared to ship medicals or food or an important document, but not to ship the last gadget bought on Amazon or whatever. And so this is another important battlefield. And one last word we issued, we supported and promoted this appeal, which came from shop stewards and also some trade union leaders, mainly supporting our organization. But we saw that in a few days there was a huge interest, a huge support for that. So what we are doing is not just to spread this appeal, collecting signatures and so on. We will try to organize a meeting, an online meeting next Monday evening, in order to, first of all, to see what the real position is on the ground and which further actions we should promote in order to continue this fight for safety and health of the workers in Italy.
Thank you, Claudio. We've had a question from one of the viewers, Mike in Britain, who points out that in Britain there's been cases of some of the bosses agreeing to shut down production, but then using it as an excuse to fire lots of workers, or saying they can't afford to pay workers, and therefore getting rid of many of the staff. In particular, there's the notorious case of Tim Martin, who's a very kind of right-wing, nasty piece of work, who's the owner of Wetherspoons, a big pub chain, who's closed down pubs but fired many workers in the process. Are we seeing similar developments in Italy, where the bosses are basically taking advantage of this and basically protecting their profits first and shutting down production, but obviously putting all of the burden onto the workers?
Well, I think that we will see more of this in the future. At the moment, there are workers, of course, who lost their job, but we are talking basically of workers who were working in outsourced services in, for instance, in schools and or other public services which were shut down. Also, some companies, of course. The government is promising to give economic support also to these workers, and I think they will have to, in one measure, at least in the first days. So I won't say that there are no people are losing their job, because this is definitely happening. But we didn't see as yet this sort of, or at least we were not reported, this sort of events like the one you related. But I think that this is going to happen in the next weeks and months, of course, because both because of the economic crisis and also because of this crisis. And many companies were already planning to reduce the workforce, or even to close down, and so on. And of course, it is easier in this turmoil and this upheaval to to have these things passed without not too many people noticing, but not as much as today.
Okay, so I just wanted to also show the viewers as well some of the other articles on Marxist.com relating to this question. We've also got a report here from just over a week ago of Spanish workers in car factories in like Mercedes, for example, who've shut down production, again spontaneously taking action against attempts to put workers in unsafe conditions. And then you've also in Britain we've got the article on Socialist Appeal here relating to the construction sites that I was discussing earlier, and we've had lots of reports in as part of our name and shame campaign against the bosses, not just in construction but elsewhere. You can see here lots of letters that have come in and scenes of workers still packing into the London Underground and so forth to try and get into work. So we can see that the conditions really you're describing, the mood that you've described in Italy is taking place elsewhere across Europe, and it won't be long, presumably, until we see similar waves and waves of strike action, of spontaneous walkouts in the rest of Europe and beyond. So I guess finally to ask then, how do you see the struggle developing from here? How do you see the mood developing now that you've had these wave of strikes and you've had these concessions from the government? And the lockdown is presumably continuing, although I see the death rate in Italy is subsiding a little bit. But how do you see things panning out in the next few days and weeks?
Well, I think it's difficult to make a perspective further than a few days. As I said, this fight is going to continue on different levels. Another important sector which is under pressure, of course, are the health workers, which are not in the position to strike or to lead any action of this sort, but certainly radicalizing and also politicizing a lot on the basis of this crisis. I think that the consequence will be widespread and very deep, and very different levels on the consciousness of the working class and of the masses in general. As I said before, all this clash has been completely public. Everyone was following, I would say, by the hour this question, and will continue to do so. And I think that on the international level, as you mentioned, these strikes and these protests are going to be repeated in all the countries which are hit by the epidemic. That is, most of the countries in the world, and certainly the pattern looks exactly the same in most of the European countries. And not only European, also in the US and Canada, I think we will witness the same action. And of course, there are in-depth consequences. For instance, a big debate of what is important, what is not, what is essential, what is not, who runs the economy, who really makes the economy working, because the workers saw that it's them. Well, they knew already, but they saw in a very graphic way that the working class can stop the country if it wants to. And also the question of the role of the ruling class has been exposed as never before, at least since decades and generations. I mean, this industrialists really spitting in the face of workers. The leader of the Italian CBI said, "Oh, a general strike, I don't see why." That's what he stated openly on Sunday. And the millions of workers said, "You don't know why, we do know why. The reason is because we want to protect our life, and nothing less than that." So I think that this is really creating a revolution in the consciousness of the people. And this will be seen not only in the next few days, but for the whole of the next historical epoch, which is clearly, this is clearly a juncture, a turning point, which is going to be remembered as one of the most, or maybe the most important turning point in the rebuilding of the class consciousness internationally, not only in Italy, but in the world. And also the international aspect of this crisis, the fact that the same is happening everywhere, basically. I think it's absolutely decisive. We had international movement in the last years, like Fridays for Future or the anti-war movements and so on. But a working class movement, an international working class movement of this sort, has not been seen since decades. And now the workers are awakening to their own force and their own role in society. And I think this is the most important aspect of the changing cultures on these dramatic events.
Thank you, Claudio. Thank you for joining us tonight. That's probably about all we've got time for the moment. But no doubt we'll be calling in on you again soon to get more updates on the developments in Italy. But as you say, the likelihood is we're going to be very soon seeing these same events, these same developments taking place in Britain, in France, in Spain, and across the world. So it's excellent having you on the show tonight to give us a taste of what we can expect in our countries elsewhere. So thank you for joining us, and again, stay safe, stay healthy. We'll see you soon.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you very much again for everyone for joining us tonight. Just a reminder, if you're not already following us on our social media, check out obviously over that way, Marxist.com, obviously on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, and get in touch if you're interested in getting involved with the IMT, the International Marxist Tendency, in your area. This has been IMTV. I've been Adam Booth. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next Wednesday, same time, same place, for more news and analysis of what's taking place across the world during this coronavirus crisis, during this capitalist crisis. Thank you very much. See you next time.